6 friends went camping and vanished without a trace, until a broken camera found 7 years later revealed the terrifying reason they left their safe trail. The annual camping trip had become a tradition for the 6 college friends from Denver University. Every August for the past 4 years, Mark Thompson, Jennifer Walsh, David Chen, Lisa Park, Tom Rodriguez, and Sarah Martinez would escape to the wilderness to celebrate another year of friendship. This time, they chose Yellowstone National Park for what they promised would be their best adventure yet. Mark was the planner of the group. As an engineering student, he approached every trip with military precision. He'd researched the best campsites, mapped out hiking routes, and even created backup plans for bad weather. The group trusted his organization completely. Mark had never let them down in 4 years of camping together. The plan for August 2016 was straightforward and safe. 5 days at Madison Campground in Yellowstone, exploring the park's most popular day hikes. They would visit Old Faithful, hike to the lower falls of the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone, and maybe attempt the easier sections of the Uncle Tom's Trail if everyone was feeling ambitious. Nothing too challenging, just a relaxing week to enjoy incredible scenery and catch up before their final year of college. Jennifer, a photography major, was especially excited about the trip. She'd been planning shots for months, studying the best lighting conditions and locations throughout the park. Her camera equipment took up almost half her backpack, but she was determined to document what she called the perfect wilderness experience for her senior portfolio. David and Lisa, who had been dating since sophomore year, saw the trip as a chance to spend quality time together, away from the stress of pre-med coursework. Tom and Sarah, the other couple in the group, were looking forward to disconnecting from their busy lives as education majors preparing for student teaching. The 6 friends drove up from Denver on Sunday afternoon, arriving at Madison Campground in the early evening. Other campers later remembered seeing them that first night, a happy, well-organized group setting up 3 tents and preparing dinner over camp stoves. They seemed like experienced campers who knew exactly what they were doing. Their detailed itinerary showed they planned to spend Monday exploring the Old Faithful area, Tuesday hiking to the lower falls, Wednesday visiting the Grand Prismatic Spring, Thursday doing a longer hike to Fairy Falls, and Friday packing up to head home. Mark had filed this plan with park rangers and shared copies with everyone's families back in Denver. The last communication anyone received from the group came Tuesday evening when Jennifer posted a photo on social media showing all 6 friends at the Lower Falls overlook. The image was cheerful and normal. 6 smiling young people enjoying a perfect day in one of America's most beautiful national parks. The caption read simply, "Living our best life in Yellowstone," with several hiking and nature emojis. But Wednesday evening came and went, with no new posts or messages from any of the 6 friends. Their families weren't immediately concerned. Cell service in Yellowstone could be spotty, and the friends often went days without posting when they were camping. It wasn't until Friday, when they failed to check out of their campsite as scheduled, that park rangers discovered something was seriously wrong. Park Ranger Susan Martinez was conducting her routine Friday morning checkout patrol at Madison Campground when she noticed something unusual at Campsite 47. The 3 tents were still standing exactly where they had been all week, but there were no signs of the 6 college students who had checked in Sunday evening. Their gear was neatly organized, their camp stoves were clean and properly stored, and their coolers were still locked and secured against wildlife. What made Martinez immediately suspicious was how perfectly normal everything looked. In her 12 years working Yellowstone's campgrounds, she had seen plenty of campers who overstayed their reservations or forgot to check out properly. But those sites always showed signs of hasty departure, scattered gear, forgotten items, or obvious preparations for leaving. This campsite looked like the occupants had simply stepped away for a day hike and planned to return that evening. Martinez checked her records and confirmed that the group had reserved the site through Friday morning with checkout scheduled before 11. Their 3 vehicles were still parked in the designated spots, and a quick look through the windows revealed day packs, hiking boots, and other personal items that suggested the campers hadn't intended to go far from their base camp. The ranger's training kicked in as she began documenting the scene. She photographed the campsite from multiple angles, noting the positions of tents, gear, and vehicles. Everything was secured according to park regulations: food stored in bear boxes, camp area clean, fire ring properly extinguished. These were clearly experienced campers who knew wilderness protocols. By Friday afternoon, when the group still hadn't returned or made contact, Martinez escalated her concern to the park's search and rescue coordinator. Chief Ranger James Patterson had been hoping the missing campers would turn up with a simple explanation. Maybe they had decided to extend their stay and forgotten to notify the campground office. But as the hours passed without any sign of the 6 friends, Patterson began preparing for what could become a major search operation. The initial investigation revealed troubling details about the group's planned activities. According to the detailed itinerary that Mark Thompson had filed with park officials, the 6 friends should have spent Wednesday exploring the Grand Prismatic Spring area, Thursday hiking to Fairy Falls, and Friday morning packing up to return to Denver. But interviews with other campers revealed that nobody had seen any of the 6 friends since Tuesday evening. Sarah and Bob Henderson, who had been camping in the site next to the missing group, provided the last confirmed sighting of the 6 friends. The older couple from Minnesota remembered seeing all 6 campers returning to their site Tuesday evening around dinner time, appearing tired but happy from what looked like a successful day hike. The Hendersons had exchanged pleasantries about the beautiful weather and the stunning views at the lower falls before settling in for the night. But Wednesday morning, the Henderson couple noticed that their young neighbor's campsite was unusually quiet. They hadn't heard the normal sounds of camp stoves starting up or friends chatting over morning coffee. By Wednesday evening, when the site remained silent and they hadn't seen any activity all day, the Hendersons began to feel concerned, but assumed the group had left for an overnight backpacking trip. The investigation took on increased urgency when Patterson's team discovered that none of the group's essential hiking gear was missing from their campsite. Day packs, hiking boots, water bottles, and emergency supplies were all accounted for in their tents and vehicles. If the 6 friends had left for any kind of hiking expedition, they had done so without the basic equipment that experienced outdoors enthusiasts would never leave behind. Cell phone records provided another disturbing clue. Jennifer Walsh's final social media post from Tuesday evening at the Lower Falls was followed by complete digital silence from all 6 friends. Their phones showed no activity after Tuesday night. No calls, texts, social media posts, or even automatic check-ins with cell towers. It was as if all 6 devices had been simultaneously turned off or destroyed. Park Service investigators began interviewing every visitor who had been in the area during the relevant time period. Trail guides, fellow hikers, campground hosts, and park employees were all questioned about any interactions with or sightings of the missing group. The interviews painted a consistent picture of 6 happy, well-prepared young adults who had been following their planned itinerary without any signs of problems or conflicts. The search operation officially launched Saturday morning, with teams of rangers and volunteers spreading out along every established trail in the park's central region. The Lower Falls area, where the group had last been photographed, became the primary focus of ground search efforts. Teams with search dogs methodically worked the area, looking for any trace of human passage beyond the heavily traveled tourist trails. Aviation resources joined the effort by Saturday afternoon, with helicopter crews conducting systematic aerial searches of the vast wilderness areas surrounding the park's popular day hiking destinations. The pilots were looking for any signs that might indicate 6 people had left the established trail system, abandoned gear, makeshift shelters, or distress signals that could be spotted from above. As the weekend search efforts continued with no results, investigators began to grasp the truly baffling nature of this case. 6 experienced campers had simply vanished from one of America's most visited and well-monitored national parks. They had disappeared from an area with heavy foot traffic, established trails, and regular ranger patrols. The complete absence of any clues or traces was beginning to seem impossible. By Monday morning, what had started as a routine missing persons case had transformed into one of the largest search operations in Yellowstone's history. Chief Ranger James Patterson coordinated with multiple agencies as the search expanded far beyond the park's normal protocols. The FBI's Missing Persons Unit was brought in to assist with the investigation, while specialized search and rescue teams from Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho converged on the park. The search operation was staggering in its scope and intensity. Over 200 trained volunteers joined park rangers in systematic ground searches that covered hundreds of square miles of wilderness. Helicopter crews from the National Guard flew grid patterns over the vast backcountry areas, while fixed-wing aircraft equipped with thermal imaging cameras scanned remote regions that would be impossible to reach on foot. Search dogs from across the region were brought in to follow any potential scent trails. The canine teams worked methodically through the areas where the 6 friends were known to have hiked, but the dogs consistently lost any trace of human scent beyond the heavily traveled tourist trails. It was as if the group had simply evaporated from the established trail system without leaving any biological evidence of their passage. The media attention was intense and immediate. The disappearance of 6 college students from one of America's most famous national parks captured national headlines within days. News crews from major networks set up at park entrances, interviewing family members, search coordinators, and anyone else connected to the case. The story had all the elements that captivated public attention: young people, a mysterious vanishing, and one of the country's most beloved wilderness areas. The families of the missing students arrived in Yellowstone by Tuesday, establishing a makeshift command center at a hotel in West Yellowstone, where they could coordinate with search teams and media representatives. Mark Thompson's parents, both retired teachers from Denver, became unofficial spokespeople for the group, giving daily press conferences and pleading for anyone with information to come forward. Jennifer Walsh's mother, a nurse from Colorado Springs, organized volunteer coordination efforts that brought hundreds of additional searchers to the park. The outpouring of support from the college community was overwhelming. Fellow students, professors, and alumni traveled from across Colorado to join the search efforts. Social media campaigns shared photos of the missing friends and generated thousands of tips, though none led to any concrete discoveries. As the search entered its second week, investigators began exploring more troubling possibilities. The complete absence of any trace evidence suggested that the 6 friends hadn't simply gotten lost on established hiking trails. FBI behavioral analysts developed profiles suggesting the group might have encountered foul play or had been victims of a planned abduction, though such crimes were virtually unheard of in Yellowstone's heavily monitored environment. The investigation expanded to include interviews with every park employee, concession worker, and recent visitor who had been in the area during the relevant time period. Background checks were conducted on hundreds of individuals, looking for anyone who might have had contact with or opportunity to harm the missing students. But the interviews revealed nothing suspicious, just the consistent image of 6 happy, well-prepared young adults enjoying a perfectly normal camping vacation. Advanced search technologies were deployed as the operation continued into its third week. Ground-penetrating radar teams searched areas where bodies might have been buried or concealed. Underwater search specialists examined lakes and rivers where the group might have fallen through ice or been swept away by currents. Cave rescue experts explored the park's limited underground systems, though Yellowstone's geology offered few hiding places for missing persons. The psychological toll on searchers and families was immense. Veteran search and rescue coordinators admitted they had never encountered a case where 6 people had vanished so completely from such a well-traveled and monitored environment. The lack of any evidence, no abandoned gear, no distress signals, no witness sightings, defied every protocol and expectation for missing persons investigations in national parks. By the end of August, with search operations having consumed enormous resources without producing any results, park officials were forced to scale back the active investigation. The case remained open and active, but the daily deployment of hundreds of searchers and multiple aircraft was no longer sustainable. The families were devastated by the decision, but understood the practical limitations facing the search teams. The media attention gradually shifted to other stories, but the case of the 6 missing college students continued to generate occasional headlines and speculation. True crime podcasts devoted episodes to analyzing the mysterious disappearance, while internet forums buzzed with theories ranging from the plausible to the bizarre. Some suggested the group had encountered a serial killer operating in national parks, while others proposed more exotic explanations involving everything from witness protection programs to alien abductions. The families never gave up hope, organizing annual search efforts every summer when weather conditions allowed access to Yellowstone's remote backcountry areas. Private investigators were hired to follow up on tips and potential sightings, though none ever produced credible evidence. The University of Colorado established a memorial scholarship in honor of the 6 friends, keeping their memory alive while their fate remained unknown. Years passed with agonizing slowness for the families who had lost their children to Yellowstone's vast wilderness. The case files remained active, and park rangers continued to watch for any sign of the missing students during their regular patrols. But as 2017, 2018, and 2019 came and went without any discoveries, even the most optimistic investigators began to accept that the 6 friends were likely dead, victims of some catastrophe that had left their bodies in locations too remote to ever be found. The official search for the 6 missing college students was suspended in November 2016 after 3 months of intensive efforts had produced no evidence of their fate. Chief Ranger James Patterson made the difficult decision to scale back active operations while keeping the case open for any future developments. The families were devastated, but understood that continuing to deploy massive resources without any promising leads was no longer feasible. The years that followed were filled with false hopes and crushing disappointments for the families of Mark Thompson, Jennifer Walsh, David Chen, Lisa Park, Tom Rodriguez, and Sarah Martinez. Every few months would bring reports of suspicious items found in remote areas of the park, a piece of fabric caught on a branch, footprints that might have belonged to missing hikers, camping gear discovered miles from any established trail. Each discovery would reignite hope and trigger small-scale search efforts, but none ever led to any concrete answers. Mark's parents, Robert and Susan Thompson, became relentless advocates for missing persons cases in national parks. They lobbied Congress for increased funding for search and rescue operations and helped establish a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting families of people who disappeared in wilderness areas. Their annual candlelight vigil at the University of Colorado became a somber tradition that drew hundreds of participants who refused to let the 6 friends be forgotten. Jennifer Walsh's family hired private investigators multiple times over the years, following up on reported sightings and pursuing alternative theories about what might have happened to the group. Every lead proved to be either a mistaken identity case or someone seeking attention by fabricating false information. The private detectives eventually concluded that the 6 students had most likely died in some kind of accident in an extremely remote location where their remains would never be found. The case became a favorite topic for true crime enthusiasts and internet conspiracy theorists. Online forums dedicated to missing persons cases featured lengthy discussions analyzing every detail of the disappearance. Some theories focused on the possibility that the group had encountered a serial killer who was never caught. Others suggested more exotic explanations involving government cover-ups, witness protection programs, or encounters with unknown predators living in Yellowstone's vast wilderness. Professional search teams organized by the families continued to explore remote areas of the park every summer when weather conditions allowed access to high-elevation regions. These volunteer efforts were staffed by experienced mountaineers, cave rescue specialists, and retired search and rescue professionals who donated their time and expertise to the cause. But Yellowstone encompasses over 2.2 million acres of wilderness, much of it virtually inaccessible to ground searches. The University of Colorado established the Thompson-Walsh Chen Park Rodriguez-Martinez Memorial Scholarship for students studying environmental science and outdoor recreation. The scholarship program ensured that the 6 friends would be remembered for their love of wilderness and their bright academic futures, even as hope for finding them alive gradually faded. Annual fundraising events kept their memory alive while supporting other students who shared their passion for the outdoors. Park Service officials periodically reviewed the case files, looking for any overlooked clues or new technologies that might help solve the mystery. Advances in satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, and DNA analysis techniques offered theoretical possibilities for eventually locating the missing students. But the vast scale of the potential search area made systematic application of these technologies impractical. The families gradually accepted that they might never know what happened to their children, but they never stopped hoping for answers. Every phone call from law enforcement agencies brought a mixture of anticipation and dread. Perhaps this would finally be the call that provided closure, or perhaps it would be another false alarm that reopened old wounds without providing any real progress. By 2023, 7 years after the disappearance, most people outside the immediate families had moved on to other stories and concerns. The case files remained active in Park Service databases, and rangers were still instructed to watch for any signs of the missing students during their regular patrols. But the intensive focus and media attention had long since shifted elsewhere. The breakthrough that would finally provide answers came from an entirely unexpected source. Jake Morrison was a 25-year-old wildlife photographer from Bozeman, Montana, who specialized in documenting Yellowstone's ecosystem during different seasons. He had been working on a multi-year project photographing the park's thermal features and their effects on local wildlife populations. On a cold morning in late March 2023, Morrison was hiking through a remote section of the Hayden Valley, following a route that would take him to some lesser-known hot springs, where he hoped to capture images of wildlife attracted to the warm water during winter months. The area was far from any established hiking trails and required significant mountaineering skills to access safely. Morrison was setting up his camera equipment near a cluster of thermal pools when something caught his eye in the thick brush about 50 yards away. What appeared to be a small piece of bright orange fabric was hanging from a dead tree branch, fluttering in the wind like a signal flag. In his years of wilderness photography, Morrison had developed an eye for anything that seemed out of place in natural environments. Morrison approached the orange fabric carefully, his photographer's instincts telling him that anything man-made in such a remote location deserved investigation. As he got closer, he realized it wasn't just a piece of fabric. It was attached to something much larger that had been hidden in the thick undergrowth for years. What he found would finally provide answers to one of Yellowstone's most baffling missing persons cases. Partially buried under layers of fallen leaves and forest debris was a large waterproof equipment case, the kind that serious outdoor photographers use to protect expensive camera gear in harsh conditions. The bright orange fabric Morrison had spotted was actually part of the case's protective covering, designed to make it visible in emergency situations. The case had clearly been there for several years, weathered by countless seasons, but still intact, thanks to its military-grade construction. Morrison's hands shook as he carefully extracted the case from its hiding place. Years of photographing in Yellowstone's wilderness had made him familiar with the park's missing persons cases, and he immediately recognized the potential significance of finding abandoned equipment in such a remote location. The case was heavy, suggesting it still contained whatever equipment had been stored inside years earlier. After documenting the discovery site with his own camera, Morrison hiked back to the nearest ranger station to report what he had found. Park officials arrived within hours to secure the scene and transport the mysterious case to their forensic analysis facility. The discovery generated immediate excitement among investigators who had been waiting 7 years for any breakthrough in the case of the 6 missing college students. The waterproof case was opened under controlled conditions by Park Service forensic specialists, with FBI evidence technicians observing the process. Inside, they found Jennifer Walsh's professional camera equipment, miraculously preserved by the case's waterproof seal. The camera itself showed signs of damage from impact and water exposure, but its memory cards had been protected and potentially contained the final images or videos taken by the missing students. The digital forensics team worked methodically to extract data from the damaged memory cards. Most of the files were corrupted beyond recovery, but advanced data recovery techniques managed to retrieve partial video footage from the final hours before the group's disappearance. What they found on those recovered files would finally explain why 6 experienced campers had left the safety of established trails and ventured into one of Yellowstone's most dangerous areas. The recovered footage showed Jennifer Walsh filming her friends as they explored an area far from any marked trails. The timestamp indicated the video was recorded Wednesday morning, hours after their last known location at the lower falls. In the grainy, damaged footage, the 6 friends could be seen excitedly discussing something they had discovered in the wilderness, something that had convinced them to abandon their planned itinerary and follow it deeper into the backcountry. The crucial revelation came in the final seconds of recoverable video. Jennifer's camera had captured images of what appeared to be a severely injured grizzly bear cub, trapped in some kind of snare or wire fencing. The audio was mostly corrupted, but investigators could make out fragments of conversation where the group was debating whether to try to rescue the animal. Mark Thompson's voice could be heard saying something about having to help it and can't just leave it here. The video evidence finally explained the fatal decision that had led to the group's disappearance. The 6 college friends had encountered what they believed was a bear cub in distress and had chosen to follow it deeper into the wilderness in an attempt to provide assistance. This act of compassion had drawn them away from safe, established trails and led them into terrain where they became lost and eventually perished from exposure. Follow-up investigations revealed that the injured bear cub was likely part of a larger family group. Adult grizzly bears are extremely protective of their young and will attack anything they perceive as a threat. The students, in their attempt to help the cub, had unknowingly entered territory where adult bears were present. Investigators theorized that the group had either been killed by protective adult bears or had fled so far from established trails while avoiding the bears that they became hopelessly lost in the vast wilderness. The discovery of Jennifer's camera case led to intensive searches of the remote area where Morrison had found it. Specialized teams equipped with ground-penetrating radar and cadaver dogs spent months combing the region. Eventually, scattered remains were found in a deep ravine several miles from where the camera case had been discovered. The remains were identified as belonging to all 6 missing students through dental records and DNA analysis. The forensic analysis of the recovered remains confirmed what investigators had suspected from the camera footage. All 6 college students had died from a combination of exposure, dehydration, and injuries sustained during their desperate attempt to escape the remote wilderness area where they had become lost. The medical examiner determined they had survived for several days after leaving the established trail system, but their lack of proper survival equipment and knowledge of the terrain had ultimately proven fatal. The investigation into what had actually drawn them to their deaths revealed a heartbreaking irony that would haunt their families forever. Park Service biologists who examined the area where the camera case was found made a disturbing discovery. The injured bear cub that had motivated the 6 friends to abandon their safe hiking plans was actually a yearling black bear that had become entangled in old survey tape left behind by a geological research team years earlier. The survey tape, made of bright yellow plastic, had been wrapped around the young bear's leg and body, creating the appearance of serious injury that had triggered the students' compassionate response. But by the time investigators located the area in 2023, they found no trace of the bear. It had likely freed itself from the survey tape within hours or days of the students' encounter. The 6 friends had died trying to rescue an animal that had never been in any real danger. Even more tragically, the geological survey team that had left the plastic tape in the wilderness had been conducting research on behalf of the Park Service itself. The tape had been improperly disposed of during a 2015 study of thermal features in the area, creating an environmental hazard that violated park regulations. The government agency responsible for protecting Yellowstone's wilderness had inadvertently created the very trap that lured 6 young people to their deaths. The families of Mark Thompson, Jennifer Walsh, David Chen, Lisa Park, Tom Rodriguez, and Sarah Martinez filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the National Park Service, alleging that improper disposal of research materials had directly caused their children's deaths. The case was eventually settled out of court for an undisclosed amount, with the Park Service accepting responsibility for the survey tape that had triggered the fatal rescue attempt. The University of Colorado held a memorial service in May 2023 that drew over 3,000 people, including classmates, professors, search volunteers, and Park Service officials. The 6 friends were remembered not only as victims of a wilderness tragedy, but as young people whose compassionate instincts had led them to risk their own safety, trying to help what they believed was a suffering animal. Their final act had been one of courage and kindness, even though it had ultimately cost them their lives. The case led to significant changes in research protocols within the national park system. New regulations required all research teams to use biodegradable materials whenever possible and to conduct thorough site cleanup following any studies conducted in wilderness areas. The Park Service also implemented enhanced training programs for research contractors, emphasizing the potential consequences of leaving any man-made materials in natural environments. Jake Morrison, the wildlife photographer whose discovery had finally solved the 7-year mystery, donated his reward money from the families to establish a wilderness safety education program. The program provides free training to college students and young adults on proper hiking safety, emergency preparedness, and the importance of staying on established trails even when encountering wildlife that appears to need assistance. The bitter irony of the case became a cautionary tale shared in wilderness safety courses throughout the country. The 6 college students had been killed not by their own recklessness or poor planning, but by their desire to help what they perceived as a suffering animal. Their compassionate instincts, combined with a government agency's careless disposal of research materials, had created a perfect storm of circumstances that led to tragedy in one of America's most beautiful and supposedly safe national parks. Mark Thompson's parents established the Thompson Memorial Wildlife Fund, which provides grants for non-invasive wildlife research that doesn't require leaving any materials in natural environments. The fund has supported dozens of studies that have contributed to conservation efforts, while ensuring that future research won't create the kind of environmental hazards that led to their son's death. Today, A memorial plaque near the lower falls of Yellowstone honors the memory of the 6 friends who died trying to help an animal they believed was in distress. The inscription reads, "In memory of 6 friends, whose final act was one of compassion. Their courage reminds us that the wilderness demands both respect and caution, even when our hearts tell us to help." The memorial has become a pilgrimage site for their families and friends, and a reminder to park visitors about the complex dangers that can exist even in America's most carefully managed wilderness areas. The survey tape that killed 6 young people was nothing more than ordinary plastic marking material, the kind used in countless research projects across the country. But in the wrong place at the wrong time, it had become a death trap that exploited the best instincts of 6 college students who simply couldn't walk away from what they thought was an animal in need. Their story serves as a reminder that in the wilderness, even acts of compassion can have unintended and tragic consequences. If this wilderness tragedy moved you as much as it moved me, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more cases that show how quickly things can go wrong in America's national parks. What would you have done if you encountered what looked like an injured animal? Let me know in the comments below, and remember, sometimes the most dangerous decision is the one that comes from the heart.